Well, as you can see, it looks a little bit different than it did last November when I did the walk around. It was all white at that time. I've had the opportunity to put the paint scheme on it that I wanted. I've been waiting 3 years to put this on. That is not paint, that's actually a very, very thin vinyl wrap. Same thing as they would put on a car. I've had different people private message me and ask me how or why I did certain things, and all of them were building a Challenger. So I thought maybe I'd do a little bit more of an in-depth walk around, show you some of the things that I did. Not to say that that's the only way it should be done, but to say that the more information you have, the better equipped you are to make a decision on what to do on your own airplane. So I'm going to start at the front and work to the back. I wanted the pitot in the nose, and of course this is only about 3/16 of an inch thick. Rather than build an aluminum bracket in there, which I have seen, we pointed the nose down, poured fiberglass rosin in there. So I have about 1.25 inches of fiberglass rosin, which gave me a nice thick block with which to drill through with my 1/4 inch drill bit. This I just simply found kicking around the house. It is part of a weight humidifier that goes on the hot air plenum on your furnace, and this was designed for a 1/4 inch tubing. It doesn't stop it from pulling out, but it does stop it from going in. The pitot tube cover is nothing more than a piece of fuel line with some silicone, ring, and a tag. The weather stripping that comes from Quad City is more than adequate. I found it to be a little bit more hard plastic than rubber, and I didn't mind spending a little bit more, and I got this from Aircraft Spruce. I'll see if I can give you a profile of it here. It does a wonderful job of sealing up the front of the plane, and I have one there, and one there, and one there, and there's 2 more on the bottom on either side of the landing gear. One of the things that I did was, you'll notice that the windshield comes down further than normal. I found a lot of them would come down to about there, and then there would be quite a transition point. And I thought, if I bring it down a little bit farther, will it look a little bit more streamlined? Some people don't like it. That's okay. I'm thrilled with it. I like the look. But one of the benefits of doing that I found was, you'll see, where is it? You'll see that. Of course, that's on the other side of the Lexan. That is a 1 1/4 inch clevis pin. And I drilled through the top of the through the top of the fiberglass, right through the curved tube that comes from the factory, and that clevis pin goes right down through the fiberglass and completely through the curved tube, and that's how I secure the top part of the nose cone. Now, how do you get those to line up perfectly? Because when you slide the nose cone on from the front, you could be 1/4 inch off to the left or off to the right. So what I did, and I hope you can see this, I found the geometric center of the curved tube and I put a bolt in there. Very, very small bolt. It's black and I don't think it's showing up. There it is. It's below the silver one. And I notched out the fiberglass. That is the very center of the nose cone, and as long as I slide it on and I put the notch in the bolt, everything else lines up. I'm going to go up top here. Okay, I put a rubber seal across here. I walked into an avionics shop and I said, I want the cheapest VHF antenna that you've got. He went to the scrapyard, picked this one out and said, there you go, it doesn't get any cheaper than that. And it's actually a wonderful antenna. You know, it's not a fancy white-based antenna that you'd find on a Cessna, but it works really well. Of course, it's got a threaded part down below with which to secure it to the fiberglass. Now, when you install an antenna on an airplane, you have to put a ground plane in there. And a lot of people use a big sheet of aluminum. I didn't. I used Reynolds wrap. Just plain aluminum tin foil right out of the kitchen. And we used contact cement, and we lathered or covered the whole inside of this with Reynolds wrap aluminum and made sure that the antenna was properly grounded to it, and it works wonderful. I have great transmit and receive capability. Some people will get the joke. If you are a person that has one of the springs holding your doors open, sometimes they can be a bit of a pain because you have to undo these bolts in order to get the doors off. So what I did, where are we? I drilled out the pin on this end, put a clevis pin in there and a ring, and that makes taking the doors off really easy. I can take each door off in probably under a minute, and the two springs I tie wrap up into there. When the Challenger comes from the factory, it comes with a sheet of aluminum here with about 4 rivets, and they want you to rivet the heck out of it. And I thought, well, that's a real good space for storage, because I needed storage. There's a reason. So I went to Aircraft Spruce and I got some wood for here and for here and for the back seat. And I made a storage box under there. And it's big enough to hold a headset, first aid kit, some survival equipment, ropes. This actually comes from the factory as wood, but it doesn't come down this far. It only comes to about there. And everybody I know puts a sheet, I have a bee around me and I'm allergic to them, puts a sheet of aluminum across here, because otherwise your seat squishes through, your butt pushes through there. It's kind of uncomfortable, so I went and got a new one. All of this wood actually has 4 coats of Flecto high gloss Varathane on it. Each coat sanded in between. And my wife tells me I got carried away. And I probably did. Those are the controls for the radiator louvers on the top. And I did mention before in the other video that this is all heat shrink tubing. There's the water bottle. If you're going to do that, make sure you get one that's a really good quality one. Don't scrimp on it, because some of the cheaper ones that you buy at Princess Auto and places like that don't hold the water bottle as securely as you need. You don't want that thing come flying out in rough weather. This airplane has a flux capacitor. It is the one true idiotic luxury that I allowed myself. Doesn't everybody have one of these? That's been a constant source of fun when you're coming up a taxiway and somebody's in the way. You'll always get a giggle out of them. We put a, here it is, parking brake on there. These are the Morse cables. These are what unlock and lock the landing gear. And I would simply pull that forward, and there's another one there, pull it forward. And then I would reach down here, pull this way I would pull it, and that round hook gets hooked onto there. So that actually physically pulls the landing gear up. And then you push these in and that locks the landing gear up. And I gotta move to the back seat. Okay, you'll notice that the Morse cable doesn't go up to the front here like a lot of people do. The reason being is that I knew that 99% of the time I was going to be flying by myself. And I didn't want to trip over that every time I got in and out. So I have it coming along like this, and it goes up through the bottom of the thing, through the bottom of the plane, about 5 inches behind the Roni bracket. And I'll show you how it's secured. You can see it coming along the side of the storage box under the seat. That gives you an idea. Now, to stop it from fraying or elongating or ripping the fabric, there's the one on the far side. I made a bracket so that it wouldn't damage the fabric. That tube is not normally on Challengers. I installed that. I have a reason. I've cut off my rear control stick, and I've made it so that I can simply slide it in, put a bolt, castle nut, and a ring on it, and then the person in the back seat has the ability to fly the plane. I did not want a push-to-talk switch wired up to that control stick. That connection would be just one more thing to go bad. So, this is a very lightweight plastic box where the headset plugs go into. And I put the push-to-talk switch down here, but I want it protected. So that cup is nothing more than a copper end cup that goes on your 1/2-inch copper plumbing tubing in your house. You would normally solder that on. So I simply drilled a hole in the bottom, spray painted it silver, and there's my push-to-talk switch. The very first time, my wife got in the airplane, she said, "Where's my water bottle holder?" So I thought maybe it would be a good idea to install one. I thought long and hard about where I was going to put it, and I'm glad I put it there. Last week I went on a 400-mile 2-day trip, and I was real glad that I had availability of a second water bottle, and it's so located that I can reach over my right shoulder and grab that water bottle. One of the best pieces of advice that I received when I was building the airplane was to put this fabric, this pink edge tape, over top of all the tubes. The reason being is that all of the sand, dirt, dust, grit, gravel, whatever that falls on your floor always goes in here, gets trapped between the aluminum tube and the fabric, damages the fabric, and it's a real pain to get it out of there. All you do is wet the area, lay the pink edge tape down, paint it over with poly brush, and let it dry. And let me tell you, it's a lot easier to vacuum out the inside of the airplane when you do that. This is scat tubing. It's a little bit lighter than what comes from Quad City. It's a little bit more workable, shall we say. And I've got storage under there too. This is Andrew Forber's masterpiece, and I just love this. I can't work with fiberglass. I'm allergic to it, so he came over, and let me tell you how he did it. This is all fiberglass behind here. It's extremely thin. We glued this tube and the tube that goes down there and the flat area up there, and we put fabric on there. This was long before the outside of the airplane was fabric, of course. And we shrunk it. So now we have a nice fabric covered base with which to work. He covered it with fiberglass rosin, put one thin layer of fiberglass cloth on there, put more rosin on the outside of it, and we sort of molded the fiberglass around here as best as you can when you're working with something as difficult as fiberglass. let it dry, and then the whole thing peels off of the fabric really easy. And then you trim it with a pair of scissors or tin snips, sand it all down with a random orbital sander, and then put vinyl naugahyde on it, and it does a really nice job. And there is storage in behind the seat. That's extremely lightweight aluminum. I didn't want to add much weight. I have just recently replaced my Roni brackets. I bought brand new ones. Didn't need to, but I wanted to, just simply for peace of mind. When you pull those black-handled levers in there, it pulls the cable this way, pulls that plate out of there. There's the other side of the plate. So that unlocks the landing gear. And then when you pull on the white-handled thing that I showed you, this actually lifts this landing gear up, and then you slide the Morse cables this way, and then this plate actually locks them in the up position. There is an access panel. I wanted to retain as much heat in the cockpit and this area as I could, because I knew I would be flying over long distances in the cold winter, and our temperatures get down as low as -30, -40 in northern Ontario, which is where we will be going. Rather than the curved tube that they supply, I took 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch angle, secured it to there and there. There's a gusset there and there's a gusset there. And that allowed me to put nut plates, or anchor nuts, or whatever you want to call them, in behind here. So this plate is removable. The one on the bottom is actually riveted on. I'm glad I made this removable, because not too long ago, last winter, I had a problem with my heater core. I would turn my heater on and the windshield would fog up. Turn the heater off, it would immediately go away. Turned out that it was a minute little crack right where these two copper things, ports, whatever, come out of the heater core. So I got that soldered up. Let me see if I can get you a better angle here. I had the ability to put a hinge here and make this into a little door. That's a Zeus fastener, and I can actually lift that up, and I can get my hand in there. I can store stuff, I can hide stuff. But to be honest with you, in all of this time, I've never found a reason to put my hand in there or put anything in there for storage. When people are putting their fabric on, there are two tubes, one where my little finger is, one where my pointy finger is. And a lot of people bring the fabric up to that bottom one. They rivet it, tape it, paint it, glue it, and it always looked a little weird to me. But if I was going to bring it up and miss that tube, I knew that I had to have a really strong glue contact up here. So what I did was I took a piece of aluminum, very thin, this wide, and I glued it to the top one and to the bottom one on the inside. So now when I bring the fabric up, it goes over and it comes down to about that far. So it's really well glued, so that allows me to have this compound curve here, and then I don't have to worry about the stress letting go on the glue. When the airplane comes from the factory, it comes from a hard plastic tail wheel, and every time it sat on its tail it would make an awful thunk, which would really grind on my nerves. I was given this, which weighs an ounce or so more than the other one, but as you can see, I've had to add weight to the tail of the airplane, and the two of them together have given me a perfect C of G. I had a bearing go bad in my top cog. And this is where you need to be looking. You need to look in there for any kind of evidence of movement or any spalling of the aluminum. You're going to notice that there's a lock wire and a hole in that bolt on the redrive. There's a reason for that. The day that we did the break-in, the airplane was tied to a tree. It was also tied to a truck. I was going to make sure it wasn't going anywhere. We had adjusted the belt tension, completely forgot to tighten up the locking nuts, and about halfway through the run-up there was a thunk, and we got out. That bolt was missing, and there was a hole right there about the size of a silver dollar. Never found the bolt again. I figure it's embedded in the side of my neighbor's house. At that time, we put Oratex patch. You can just barely see the patch. And it was white, and you could hardly see it because the rest of the airplane was white at that time. And now that we've put the vinyl wrap over there, you can't see it at all. Do not expect to take that bolt in and ask your normal machine shop to drill it. They can't. None of your drills will go through that. It is so hardened. I had to take it to a specialty machine shop. And some people say all you need to do is tighten up the locking nuts and use blue Loctite. And once bitten, twice shy, I decided I wanted it lock wired. This has float plane grommets. If you're thinking about putting your airplane on floats, you'll notice that it's got a little scoop. And that's so any water that gets splashed up from the floats goes this way and can't go in. And of course there's a hole this way, and it's actually a very small hole. It's not as big as what you see there. This airplane has fuel tanks in the wings. And when I was building it, the instructions say to put your blue fuel line in there, and then they want you to change it every 5 years. And I thought, now how do you get inside the wing to change a blue fuel line? So I contacted Quad City, and they said, yes, you can use proper aircraft grade aluminum fuel line with blue fuel fittings. So that goes into the fuselage, and then from there, blue fuel line comes down to the Y and then goes to the gasculator. If you want, you can take the time to cut out the plastic around there with a Dremel tool and a very small grinder on the end of it. It does do a really good job of making sure that that doesn't really twist in the wind. It'll take you a bit of time. It's a bit of a pain. I see a lot of people putting these brackets over top of the plastic. So I inquired from the professionals, from the people who build airplanes, and that's really frowned upon. You're putting a structural bracket over top of something that's plastic and becomes brittle with age, and that would mean that this thing would loosen up. So they would really prefer that you cut out the plastic, as I've done here, and rivet those brackets directly onto the aluminum strut. Boom bail off of a sailboat, available at any boating store. Make sure you put a washer in between the bail and the brackets. You don't want to be scratching the brackets. These are unbelievably bright strobe lights. They're actually Canadian made, and they're available from Aircraft Spruce. And let me see, can I give you some? Yeah, they're about as thick as my fingernail. And that's actually siliconed on. It's perfectly flat on the bottom, siliconed on, and the only thing that goes through the fiberglass is 2 very small wires. Quick scenario on how I got this paint scheme. When I was building the plane, still hadn't come up with a paint scheme that we were happy with. And my son suggested, why don't you try freelancers.com? I said, all right, what is that? Well, it's a website where various graphic designers from around the world compete for your money. So I put up $200, and it was $200 I was going to lose, no matter how I looked at it, because I had to declare a winner. And I didn't really handcuff anybody. I said, here's an airplane. I'm kind of an older guy. I don't really want skull and crossbones or flames coming off the nose, but I'm not going to hold you back. Use your imagination. And I think we had 13 submissions, and some of the submissions that came in, I thought, oh my God, I've just wasted that $200. And the very last guy came in with this design. And at the time, I gave him an existing picture of a Challenger on floats, and I said, this is what the airplane looks like. So when you're finished, superimpose this color scheme onto that airplane. If you look hard enough, you'll find it on Google, but you'll notice that there's no registration on the side of the airplane because it's simply an artist's rendition of what it should look like. So I've been waiting until now to get the color on, and I'm happy with the way it turned out. I do have 3 hinges on all the control surfaces. This comes from the factory, Lexan. Do yourself a favor. Make one out of aluminum, because everybody I know eventually breaks the Lexan, and then you're having a very uncomfortable flight pushing really hard on your right rudder. Make one out of aluminum, and whenever I go away, I always carry a spare one. Yes, it's Lexan, but that's because it's really light. The gascolator goes on the outside, and the reason why it's there is because I can put my little tester cup right here and test my fuel. I do have the new spring-loaded shiny brackets to go on there. I just haven't got around to doing it. And there's a access hole on this side also. I can't think of anything that I've missed, but if you can, feel free to make a comment in the video and I will answer it to the best of my ability. Thanks a lot. Bye now.